Very important. I really would like to be able to meet with President Putin soon and get that war ended. And that's not from...
The Ukraine war caused by Russia has taken a shocking turn over the past few years, and it did not happen as anyone expected. For starters, President Donald Trump, who almost everyone once criticized for his overly friendly ties with Russia, is now taking a very hard stance. On the other hand, China is very silent in making diplomatic moves that threaten to shake its partnership with Russia to the core. The question on everyone's mind now is, did Trump and China team up to pressure Russia? What is the major driving force between these sudden shifts? The answers may just surprise you. Russia's role in the Ukraine war. In 2014, a seed of conflict was planted between Russia and Ukraine, and in February of 2022, that seed grew into a plant, and Russia made a move that shocked everyone. They launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Everyone in the world frowned at this move. Different countries rose and began to impose very stringent sanctions on Russia. While doing this, they had one purpose in mind: to cripple Russia's economy and ensure that they were pressured into withdrawing. However, they knew Russia was a very powerful country, so threats would do no good. Therefore, they began targeting finance, energy, and even defense sectors. In summary, different countries tried to isolate Russia from the global financial system. However, they must have underestimated Russia and the power it yields, because despite all that was done against it, it continued its military operation. This made people debate how effective these sanctions were and how the Russian economy was still resilient. Due to how strong the country was despite everything, people wondered if former United States President Donald Trump had a hand in it. Everyone already knew about the relationship that Trump had with Russia and its leader, Vladimir Putin. Still, after these sanctions did nothing to Russia's economy, people put their relationship under intense scrutiny. When Trump was president, he used to openly express his admiration for Putin, and he even went as far as calling him a strong leader. Trump never failed to make the people of America understand why it is very important for them to have a good relationship with Russia. Despite all that Trump tried to do, people were skeptical about this friendly attitude, especially since Russia also has controversial actions on the global stage. It didn't take long before critics began arguing that Trump was undermining the traditional United States alliances, and he emboldened Russia. Nevertheless, in all the drama surrounding Trump and Putin, one country tried its best to maintain a neutral stance: China. China has always been known to advocate for peace and stability. However, despite how much it tried to paint a picture of peace to the public, it still engages in economic activities that most people believe are unfair. China is still providing Russia with a lifeline amid Western sanctions. However, that is not all. The two nations are still growing and trading resources. Recently, it was discovered that China has become a very significant importer of Russian energy resources. For China, this allows it to secure essential commodities at a very reasonable price. And for Russia, this trade offers it an alternative market. These trades have continued to raise concerns every day. Some argue that China's action only undermines international efforts to isolate Russia economically. As a result of this, the international community is divided on what could be the best approach to address Russia's actions in Ukraine. Others believe that if they increase the sanctions and diplomatic pressure, then they will be able to get Russia to stop the war against Ukraine. At the same time, others believe that if they can engage Russia and negotiate with Putin, they may have a more peaceful way of achieving a resolution. However, the question on everyone's mind is whether Russia will agree to a peaceful negotiation. What do you think? Trump's recent comments and actions against Russia. Recently, President Trump answered many of the public's questions. In a shocking turn of events, he adopted a confrontational stance toward Russia, which in a way answered people's questions about whether he was secretly supporting Putin's actions. Nevertheless, the shift was still shocking, especially when people remembered that these two had a very amicable relationship. A few days ago, Trump told a British Broadcasting Corporation news conference that he would be talking to Putin very soon, and it sounds likely that he would apply more sanctions if the Russian leader did not come to the table. However, Trump must have been in haste to address this matter, because the very next day after that interview, he posted on his Truth Social, "I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and President Putin a very big favor," he wrote. "Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse. If we don't make a deal, and soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. He didn't stop there. Trump went ahead to write, "Let's get this war, which never would have started if I were president, over with. We can do it the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is always better. It's time to make a deal." This post baffled everyone, and most people could not believe that the same man who referred to Putin in 2022 as a pretty smart fellow for taking over a country for $2 worth of sanctions was the same man who wrote that post. In response to Trump's words, the Kremlin said it remains ready for an equal, mutually respectful dialogue. "We're waiting for signals that have yet to arrive," said President Vladimir Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov. He added that Russia sees nothing new in Trump's threats to impose sanctions. He said he likes these methods. At least he liked them during his first presidency. However, Putin has said repeatedly that he is ready to negotiate an end to the war, but that Ukraine will have to accept the reality of Russian territorial gains, which are currently about 20% of its land. Putin has also refused to accept Ukraine joining NATO, the military alliance of Western countries. Kyiv does not want to give up its territory, although President Volodymyr Zelensky has conceded he may have to temporarily cede some currently occupied land. Nevertheless, Trump's move aligns perfectly with what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told the World Economic Forum. A few days ago, the president mentioned that at least 200,000 peacekeepers would be needed under any agreement. He added that any peacekeeping force being made for his country must include U.S. troops, which would pose a realistic deterrent to Russia. He said, "It can't be without the United States. Even if some European friends think it can be, no, it will not be," adding that no one else would risk such a move without the U.S. For this reason, the Ukrainian leaders are very pleased with this tougher-talking Trump. After all, they have always said that Putin only understands strength, and the initial reaction in Kyiv to the U.S. president's comments shows that the people are currently waiting for actions, not just words. However, these recent changes in Trump's stance have caused many to ask if he had underlying reasons for it. Is it possible that one of the reasons Trump won the presidential seat for the United States was because of this firm stance? After all, he could appeal to a broader electorate by taking a tougher position on Russia. Or was he doing this just to counteract the previous criticisms of his perceived leniency toward Putin? Whatever the case, his new approach is being met with many mixed reactions, especially from people within his political base and even among his conservative allies. While some people believe that his new stand is a huge betrayal of his America First principles, many also believe that the increased United States involvement in the Ukrainian conflict will only escalate tensions with the Russians. This could lead to many unnecessary military engagements, diverting their attention from domestic issues. Despite all these, many of Trump's allies have praised his long-needed assertiveness. To them, it is the best response to Russian aggression. They also pointed out that Trump's move will deter further violations by other authoritarian regimes. It's safe to say that Trump's new stance has left different countries in a state of uproar and has, quite frankly, created a huge division. However, this incident reminded people of what happened in 2023. What exactly happened? China's surprising diplomatic move. On February 24, 2023, China, which had always remained neutral regarding the Ukraine war, finally took a more assertive stance. This stance signaled an increase in the pressure being exerted on Russia. In a paper released in 2023, China called for a ceasefire and mentioned the initiation of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. In the document titled China's Position on the Political Settlement of the Ukraine Crisis, China outlined many useful points, some of which included the international union respecting the sovereignty of all countries. China acknowledged that the countries should abandon the Cold War mentality and stop the hostilities. It also stressed that conflict and war will benefit no one. In the end, China urged all the parties to stay rational and exercise restraint to prevent the crisis from escalating. After the release of this paper, the whole world went into an uproar. Many people had long believed China would never come out of its reluctance. Still, this move showed that the country was not only coming out of its previous reluctance, but also engaging directly in the conflict's discourse. Their advocate for a ceasefire and peace skillfully positioned them as a potential mediator. And by assuming this role, they are also putting pressure on Russia to consider diplomatic solutions. This is because Russia knows that China is one of its biggest markets. According to reports from the first quarter of 2023, The trade between China and Russia reached about $53.8 billion, gaining a 40% increase from the same period in 2022. However, after the release of that paper, it was noticed that a lot of Chinese companies became hesitant to invest heavily in Russia as before, and their major concerns were over the geopolitical risks that were now involved and the impact that the Western sanctions would have on them if they continue in their old ways. Nevertheless, this move led to many questions about why China would suddenly take this stance. After all, it was obvious that the trade benefited Russia and China. So why would they suddenly take the stance of a mediator? Is it only because they fear Western sanctions, or could another reason exist? Many believe that China has suddenly seen the light, and they understand that Russia is slowly becoming isolated globally. They want to distance themselves from the country. On the other hand, many believe China is thinking solely about its global trade interests. Currently, China has the world's second largest economy, and as a result, it is deeply interwoven into the global market. However, this does not mean that it cannot be met with restrictions. Many people believe that China fears that its associations with Russia could eventually lead to second sanctions, which could cause grave damage to its relationship with other key trading partners in the West. Despite all this, there is still the motive that China is only advocating for a peaceful resolution and taking the stance of a mediator because it wants to enhance its image as a very decent global power and thereby increase its influence and soft power. This move by China has been met with a very welcoming response by Russia. In one of the official responses by the Kremlin, Russia expressed its appreciation for Beijing's approach. They said the approach was very balanced and appreciated their willingness to mediate. Nevertheless, they did not say much about China's call for a ceasefire because this would mean that Russia would have to reconsider its military strategy in Ukraine. The reason for this silence could be that Russia understands that due to China's recent action, there will be a shift in the dynamics of the no-limits partnership that the two countries used to enjoy. Now, China wants to secure its place on the global stage and may be forced to limit its trading with Russia to do that. Most people are excited about China's new stance because they see it as the only viable way to make Putin engage in meaningful negotiations. This is good and excellent on paper, but there is a subtle question about China's real intentions. This question was raised when people noticed China's proposal lacked applicable, concrete steps to resolve the conflict. Many also noticed that China only called out for respect for sovereignty and did not explicitly condemn Russia for invading Ukraine. So what could be the motivation behind China's new diplomatic move? Unexpected alliance or betrayal? The answer to that question reminds of another battle, but there have been speculations about what could happen. Many believe that what is currently happening between President Donald Trump and China is an alliance to pressure Russia into ending the Ukraine war. According to a remark made by Trump recently, he said that China holds a lot of power in this situation and they could play a major part in stopping the war. This sentence, coming from the same man who once said that China was the United States' greatest economic threat, seems to have resulted from an agreement between Trump and China. However, despite this agreement and China's new talk of peace and ceasefire, there are still growing economic ties between China and Moscow, which have made people ask if this decision was forced on China or if they came to a conclusion by themselves. Nevertheless, people have gone far in imagining what the alliance between Trump, known as the architect of the America First doctrine, and China, who is always seen as the U.S. chief rival, would look like. This global alliance would quite frankly cause a massive shift in the balance of power, and the end goal, which is to isolate Russia, may come at a very terrible cost. The parties in play know this alliance may have its own devastating cost. Could this alliance mean something different for both parties? Whatever the case, such an alliance would provoke a response from Russia. They may feel cornered, and in response, they may deepen their partnership with other countries like Iran or North Korea, which will only ignite a new geopolitical tension. As much as this alliance may cause a shift in the world, the main subject of discussion lies in the impact this will have on the Ukrainians. Their lives are currently at risk, and they are already in a lot of crisis. So would this collaboration end this violence, or would it transition into another chess move in the game of global dominance? Ukraine's reaction. This realization has left the people of Ukraine with mixed emotions. Their president, Volodymyr Zelensky, congratulated Trump's election victory and expressed that his country is hopeful that he will intervene and stop the war. Even when, in the past, Trump described Ukraine as demolished and its people as dead, he has still insisted that he can end the war in a matter of time, and he intends to. However, he has not revealed the specifics of his plan, and due to this, the people of Ukraine fear that the plan, even though it might lead to peace, may not be very favorable to them. They feel that, secretly, Trump is still very close to Putin, and this may influence his approach to sideline the interests of Ukraine. The people of Ukraine are also not comfortable with the complexity of China's position. This is because China's words and actions do not correlate. On the one hand, they advocate for peace. On the other hand, they still engage in transactions with Russia. If this persists, their opinions may be influenced in the long run, and their role as a mediator may be biased. All these leave the people of Ukraine in a high state of uncertainty and make them wonder if the war will ever come to an end, as the influence of China and Trump could either bring a peaceful resolution or prolong the conflict even more. While these skeptical games are being played, the people of Ukraine are still battling with these horrible daily realities. Lives are being lost, families are being displaced, insecurity is on the rise, and their livelihoods have been disrupted. At this point, the people of Ukraine are desperate for a solution, and the intervention of the international powers gives them hope. However, given the lengths to which they will hide this agreement's terms, they believe it won't be in their best interests. This new strategy and stance that Trump and China are taking significantly affect the economy. For everyday citizens, these new developments may lead to an increased cost of goods, fluctuations in the job markets, and even many uncertainties in the financial systems. This is because the heightened tension will increase the prices of imported goods, and the shifts in trade alliances will also lead to job displacements in industries that rely solely on international cooperation. So there is a very big chance that the Ukraine war in the future will not just affect the Ukrainians, but may affect the whole world as we have come to know it. Do you think this can happen? Leave your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Before you go, watch the other videos displayed on your screen.